So it was announced this week that Endeavour, the parent company that owns the UFC, is looking to do an IPO. Now, if you don't know what an IPO is, I'm going to tell you. It's an initial public offering, which basically means they're going to float the company on the stock market. Now, there's a lot of reasons as to why this is extremely interesting. Firstly, obviously, WME ING bought the UFC back in 2016. The E in WME stands for Endeavour. Before it was William Morris and Endeavour, and then it just became Endeavour. So when I say Endeavour, that's what I mean. They bought the UFC back in 2016 for $4 billion. Now, obviously, they didn't put all of that money in themselves because they didn't have it. They used investors, and the investors that they used are Silver Lake and KKR Investments. I don't want to get that wrong. So obviously, when you sit and think who actually owns the UFC, Endeavour owns 50.1% of the company. The other 49.9% is made up of Silver Lake Investments, KKR. Dana White still owns a small percentage. The Fertitta brothers still own a small percentage, albeit slim, and it's completely passive, so they have nothing to do with the day-to-day running of the company, but they do still own a share. Also, when Endeavour took over, they dished out percentages of the UFC to some Hollywood stars, and they basically said that you can buy into this thing for a certain amount of money. So here's the list of the people that also own the UFC: Ben Affleck, Michael Bay, Tom Brady, Rob Dyrdek, Guy Fieri, Flea, The Weeknd, Calvin Harris, Anthony Kiedis, Jimmy Kimmel, Robert Kraft, Adam Levine, Lena, LL Cool J, Cam Newton, Trey Parker, Tyler Perry, Maria Sharapova, Sylvester Stallone, Mark Wahlberg, Serena, and Venus Williams. So some of those names you'll recognise. Some of them are massive Hollywood names, and some of those names, not only will you not recognise, you'll struggle to pronounce them, just like I did. But the overall point is that the UFC is actually owned by quite a few different entities and people. And when you go for your IPO, you can't really have that. It makes it a bit messy. So what Endeavour are trying to do at the moment is raise the capital to buy these people out so that they can float the IPO, and then they will reissue shares to some of those people in, obviously, the new floated company. So all of that's slightly boring, aside from the list of people that own the UFC. But what is really interesting is when obviously a company is made public, they have to report everything. Now, the UFC obviously has been largely a private company the entire time it's been owned. And any time we find out about how much a fighter gets paid, it's because the Athletic Commission has told us. It's not because the UFC have told us. So when they have fight cards in Dubai, you rarely find out what they get paid. When you have fight cards in Las Vegas and California, the Athletic Commission publishes the pay for the fighters. So we always know when they fight, obviously, in California, Vegas, or anything like that. When they don't, we don't. And we also don't really know the profit that the UFC makes. And there's a big discussion at the moment around fighter pay and the fact that the fighters believe they should have a bigger percentage of what the profits are. So in the NFL, it's around 50%, I think. I might be making that up. It's in the back of my head. And the NBA might be 40%, for example. And the UFC, they reckon, is more around 18%, which is a lot lower. As to why anyone thinks someone should have X amount of this profit, I don't quite understand that logic. The company makes what the company makes, and you make what you make on your contract when you say whether or not you're happy with it. In any event, it will be very interesting if this IPO does go through, which obviously takes quite a while. But if it does go through, they'll have to start reporting the profits and losses each year. And if they start reporting the profits, you'll be able to drill down and see, obviously, because Endeavour owns 4 or 5 different companies. They own Miss World, the pageant for Miss World. They own Bull Riding, they bought for $100 million. They, of course, own the UFC, and they're a big talent agency. But when they file their profits and losses, you'll be able to read it all, skim through, and go, oh, UFC section, let's see how much money the UFC made for Endeavour last year. And obviously, you can manipulate the numbers to a certain degree, but on the whole, we'll be able to know exactly how much profit the UFC makes. And when we know that, we'll know how much they're paying fighters. We'll know how much they bring in on pay-per-view. We'll know how much their gates bring in. We'll know literally everything. And that will either be a good thing for the UFC or be a bad thing. It might be a good thing in the way that people have a look and go, actually, they pay their fighters quite well in ratio to what their profits are. Or they might take one look at it and go, oh, so you've got that much money, and then negotiating with fighters will become harder, etc., etc. Obviously, this sort of decision is not in Dana's hands. It's actually above his pay grade. This will have been taken at the top, and then obviously the UFC will have to adjust to this. The other interesting thing is that in the filings that they've produced to the SEC, which is what you have to do before you go public, they actually tried to do this in 2019, and then they kind of backed out of it because a few things happened and Peloton had some bad results and things like that. But what they have to do is submit a filing to the SEC with a kind of a proposal as to this is what we're going to do. They don't have to go through with it if they can't raise the funding to get to that point. But what is interesting that it does say in the contract is that Elon Musk will be on the board of directors. Now, that's a very interesting one. One, because Elon Musk has got about 1,000 companies that he's busy with. He notoriously has no time. He has 5-minute meetings. He sleeps on the floor of his factory. He's busy with Tesla and SpaceX and the Boring Company and Starlink and whatever else he's doing. But when people see an IPO and they see the success, obviously, of Elon Musk and Elon Musk's name's attached to it, that probably carries quite a bit of weight. And I'd imagine that's more why they've done it. I can't imagine Elon Musk sitting on the board of a talent agency company and spending more than 10 minutes a year on it. But for Endeavour, that's a big, big name to have when you're going to the SEC for an IPO. So lots to kind of unpack there, but as kind of a summary, this will be, I think, a good thing for fighters because they will have full visibility of the breakdown of what the company makes, and I think perhaps their bargaining power may increase. Either way, it's a pretty cool story, isn't it?